of the ship comes down and says, you can't have that. You can't have that Starlink here, sir. This is madness. And so I find that interesting, and we will check that out because I think that stuff's interesting. The cost of milk, the cost of the milk dumped. So the amount of milk that is being dumped is a lot, but the price of that retail is a lot. And so Food Professor fills us in on that. Steel tariffs and a 20% bump on March 1st, maybe. The Canadian government is increasing the price through tariffs for all steel, not just certain steel, and that's going to impact everything. Smelters are being turned off. That's interesting as well. I've got that. A pendulum is swinging back on the migrant policies. I've got an Australian guy talking about how all of the things he's sick of, and I can't blame him. I'm sick of the same things. Mamdini's New York has snow removal that is reminiscent of Guelph in that they don't remove the snow and you're on your own. So good luck with all that. I was driving in Guelph, I don't know, a couple of days after a snowstorm, maybe a day after a snowstorm, and our main streets were still very, it felt like we were driving on sand, like there was still a lot of snow in the middle of the road, and even the tracks hadn't kind of been cut yet. It was wild. And so I don't know what's going on. Everybody's talking about it in Guelph these days, and it seems like a purposeful attack using rerouting tax dollars to not do snow removal and instead do, I don't know, drum circles or some nonsense. So what else? Lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with the money. Are we heading into a debt crisis? I remember in 1995, now I was a little bit young to understand what was going on, but I remember the words sovereign debt crisis and Jean Chrétien trying to deal with that. And Canada was close to bankruptcy or very, very close to defaulting on our loans. And it was a very big deal. And are we on track for another one of those? Table Salt says at some point soon, the money's going to run out. Well, she doesn't say soon, but I think it's implied. Here's Table Salt. They say, breaking for the first time in history as of February 4th bond auction, Canada has surpassed the $1.5 trillion mark in debt owing. Canada surpassed the $1 trillion mark in 2017. So, that's not good. We used to not have a lot of debt. Now, and the other question I have is, does that include all the provincial debt, or is that just the clean federal debt? If it doesn't include the provincial debt, yikes. So, Table Salt's pretty good with this economy stuff, so I often refer to this account for this kind of stuff. And again, she says, I've been reviewing income statements for over a decade. The God's honest truth is that Canada is running out of money, is bleeding over $100 billion per year now, and is never going to be able to do half of what Carney says he will accomplish. Austerity is coming, and Alberta Leonidas says, or a debt crisis. And I think that the politicians would prefer a debt crisis so then they can blame the debt crisis and use it politically to move their political agenda forward and say, and not do something to be preventative because that's alarmist, but to be reactive. Look, we've got a debt crisis. We've got a sovereign debt crisis. We've got to do something. Austerity, right? Or look, we've got a sovereign debt crisis. We've got to do something. All of this class of people are fired. Anybody who's unvaccinated, anybody who's not following in line with the narrative. Unfortunately, I feel like that's exactly what they'd do. Suzanne says $240 million gone to the United States. Reportedly, why you cannot get answers from Evan Solomon. Maybe Robert Fife can. So Juno News is reporting conservatives are slamming the Liberals for handing $240 million to a Canadian AI company, Cohere, which the money flowed straight to the U.S. firm CoreWeave to build a data center. Critics say the government knew the money would leave Canada. Minister Evan Solomon dodged the question when asked. They always dodge questions. They don't answer the questions. Very, very seldomly do they answer the questions. Table Salt again says, breaking, Canada quietly released a statement confirming that they are lending Canada Post another $1 billion. We're now up to $2 billion. This is as Canada Post reveals that it is months away from insolvency. This is daily now. Where's all the money coming from? Where is it going to? How do we have a postal service that needs $1 billion bailouts yearly? Does Amazon need $1 billion bailouts to deliver its packages? Does anybody else need $1 billion packages? Is the U.S. Postal Service getting bailouts from the United States? Maybe. I've heard something to that effect, but I don't know the details. So, but yes, where's the $1 billion coming from? Because this is just extra money that, I guess we need another $1 billion for Canada Post. Oh, well, and then that's added to the deficit too. So we just owe more money. They're just borrowing money for this. And accountability. I've talked at length about accountability. We just don't do that. So very interesting. $2 billion for Canada Post just to keep operating. Would it be better to let it die and sell it off and retool the damn thing so it actually makes money? Like, holy smoke. John Lee Pettymore says, well, another big blow to the Canadian industry. The Horn smelter in Royan, Norana, Quebec. Sorry, everybody. I'm terrible at saying names. I got Quebec right, though. Kind of. Canada's only copper smelter and the largest processor of metals from electronic scrap in North America may shut down in 2027 because of Canada's insane environmental policies. Glencore said it was prepared to invest almost $1 billion, 730 million American, at Horn over 5 years, including 300 million for emissions reductions, but it will become impossible for the smelter to meet certain emissions targets that come into effect starting March 27. Glencore said it is halting all investments relating to emissions reduction at its Horn smelter in northern Quebec. Economic impact: the Horn smelter contributes significantly to the local economy with an estimated benefit of $500 million per year. It employs around 650 people. Elbows up. So the problem is these policies keep getting pushed forward. Elections don't mean anything, right? We can choose Poilievre or we can choose Carney, but you're not allowed to choose Poilievre because reasons, I guess. The elections are rigged. And so Carney will stay. People say he'll get a majority. I don't see how that's possible, but people are saying, oh yes, if an election's called today, the Liberals will get a majority, a 200-seat majority, super majority. And when you run last year on getting a deal with Donald Trump and instead make a deal with communist China, I don't see how that's possible. But here we are. And so people feel helpless because there's not a damn thing they can do about any of this. And it's not like the government's listening. And you could leave. You could go somewhere else, sure. And it might be better for a while. But how long before they get another Biden-esque president in and do exactly the same thing there that they're doing here? And, I mean, New York's a nightmare. The Super Bowl's a nightmare. Like, the United States may have pockets of freedom. Texas is being given over to the Muslims, which is what? Like, nobody seems to care either. There are people talking about it. Nobody seems to care. So how long, right? If they can take Texas and they can take Alberta and they can take the Horn smelter and shut it down, how long are you really safe in another location? So what do you do, right? And so all you can do is protect yourself in whatever ways you find, like buying a greenhouse and stopping your addiction to chocolate cereal or whatever for all those people. But you can't do any, like, no, we will not shut down the smelter. This is a dumb idea economically. We will not do this. But who am I? Like, I don't have any influence on this, right? And so, like, and the people who do, they think it's a good thing. Yay, we're getting rid of the smelter and all those jobs for all those racist Canadians, right? And I'm not even implying that anybody working at the Horn smelter is racist, but people in Ottawa hate everybody in Canada. So I can't help but attribute a hateful, vengeful bent to anything they think about anybody in Canada. Alberta Plumber says, just got a call from my supplier. All steel products are going up 20% as of March 1st. Our Canadian government is now placing tariffs on all non-Canadian steel, not just American steel. Our government is so stupid it hurts. We don't even manufacture close to enough to be doing shit like this. And so, yeah, we have people in charge who make bad decisions and who don't. It reminds me of, I worked in mental health, and there are people who work directly with the kids, and then there are people who work and they approach things from a book-learned kind of school. And so their book-learned school doesn't work practically, right? And so it seems like people are making decisions from book learning, and they've never actually done a practical day of anything in their lives. And when they meet the actual thing that they're telling people to do, when they actually try and do it and it fails, they don't understand because they've never actually tried to do it. You know what I'm saying? And so I used to be told all the time, oh, you have to do this. And I was like, well, that's great if you have one kid and endless hours, but you have 9 kids and you maybe have, depending on the day, not much time with each one of them. So like, sure, maybe you could do stuff like that. But, and also, if there's no consistency between teams, and if there's no consistency in the morning to the evening, or in the morning to the school to the evening, then it's not actually going to work. They'll do it sometimes when somebody cues them, but most of the time that person's going to forget. Like, you have to build things into reality, not make this unreal thing manifest because there's people forcing it, right? Like, That's not how people live. People default if it's too hard. Anyway, regardless, the people who have never tried to implement their programs don't understand the actual practical challenges to implementing their programs. And then when you bring them to them, they act all, oh, I'm so much better than you and you don't understand and I've got, big education and, if only I could do this. And I was like, all right, how about you come and do it then? Come down and have dinner with us and show us how you do this at the dinner table, right? They didn't. They tried and then they couldn't implement it. And I was like, see? Frances Widdowson, let's do our grab bag of governance. At this point, so Frances is talking about, she was being accused of engaging in a Twitter war, and they're trying to not reinstate her in her capacity as a professor at her university. The union is fighting her reinstatement, I think. I don't think they're fighting on her side. And she's doing these tours around campuses to talk about the reality of the situation vis-a-vis the Kamloops graves, children's graves that they were claimed they found and they didn't actually find because they didn't find them. And the police are allowing drummers to intimidate Frances Widdowson, and they won't move the drummers back. And Widdowson asks them to move them back, and they say no. And if you touch them, you're going to be arrested for assault. So this is what we're dealing with. These people, the police, they don't work for us. They work for the globalists who are in charge of our government. And police who see something wrong with this, they've left already. They work at X-Copper. They work at, we'll get you out of a traffic ticket. They work at other places. They don't partake in this. It's the same reason I left the school board. I was like, I see what's happening here. I'm not going to participate in this. I'm out. And so the good cops leave, and the police who have no ability to question what they're being told will do this. And maybe they think even they're doing the right thing. Who knows? But I don't think this is correct. Widdowson says, at this point, the drums were so loud behind me at the University of Lethbridge that I could feel the concussive force in my hair. The police officers refused to move the drummers back and told me if I touched them, I would be charged with assault. Here's the video. So the cop doesn't even look. He just turns his head and shakes his head and looks the other way. And how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with an institution that's been that corrupted? How do you deal with that? It's crazy. Tracy, let's talk about the Liberal Party trying to take over Ontario. We've already got a Liberal Party. It's called Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives, but they're definitely Liberals. And Tracy says, why such a long runway? So Steve is reporting Ontario Liberals will elect their new full-time leader in November. Why the long runway? Because Carney's got a very, very small, very close to a majority, but he doesn't have a majority. But with the NDP and the Greens and everybody, it's a de facto majority. It's exactly the same place we've been in for the last 5 years or whatever. They can get past whatever they want to get past for the most part. And Carney doesn't want to lose that. So he's going to keep Nate Erskine-Smith taking the salary and the whole deal as long as he can. And so we'll see. Nate Erskine-Smith says if they call the Scarborough by-election, I'll quit tomorrow. That's what he said, but we'll see. Steve says, so this is the November 9th to November 20th. Ontario Liberal Party members will cast their ballots online. So there you go. It'll be an online vote, and I'm sure it'll be overseen by Deloitte, right? Which is the last people who did that. And counted by Dominion. Don't you worry, folks. Brian Lilly says, so Nate Erskine-Smith is currently the sitting federal Liberal MP for Beaches, East York and Toronto. He says he'll be running for the provincial Liberal MPP in Scarborough Southwest. He's also now running to be the Ontario Liberal leader, but he's still taking his MP's salary. Are there other jobs you can do that in? Like where you can stay in your current job and then running for president, running for these positions is almost a full-time job in and of itself, right? Politics is one of the only jobs that I know of where you can put a pause on your duties and go run for another office and then come back. There are other people who did this as well. Guelph had a city councillor pause and run for a liberal seat, I think. Maybe she even got it. But if she didn't get it, she was going to be able to come back to her council seat. So I was like, that's weird. Maybe it's not weird. Maybe you can just take a leave of absence as long as you're not paid. But it seems like Erskine-Smith is being paid until he quits. Anyway, Pierre Poilievre says, thank you to the former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott for stopping by Parliament to meet. We talked about a country that rewards hard work, develops its resources, secures its borders, and delivers affordable prices for its people. Australia is just as woke as Canada, and neither of these guys are talking about it. And later in the show, I've got an Australian guy right here who's very upset about everything. No, that's not it. Very upset about everything that's going on. This one's it, I think. And he says, I'm sick and tired of all of this nonsense. So people are realizing what's going on, and they're saying, we're not going to participate in all of this, but our politicians are not talking about any of that. They're pretending they're having these meetings, and the meetings don't do anything. The meetings are showing that they're bending the knee to the globalist order, I think, in my opinion. Like, this isn't a meeting like, oh yeah, man, Australia's really got their head on straight. They're really doing the right things, right? They're trying to ban social media for under 16s, right? And Poilievre's like, oh yeah, let's talk with these guys. They're doing the right thing. Bullshit. Come on, right? Like, no, I don't think so. That's a hard no for me, dog. Blacklock's reporter says, safety minister testifies that he's not a China expert when asked to explain cooperation pact between the RCMP and Beijing cops. Does Beijing respect human rights? Yes or no? And he won't answer. He's not a China expert. So what is a woman? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. So the liberals don't answer questions they don't like, and they just continue to push forward with their ideology, and we don't have any real... I have not seen any kind of real plan. The last time the Conservatives were the opposition, they prevented a lot of movement on the online harms bill, and it seemed like a plan. This time, they're passing the Liberal budget. So it doesn't seem like they have a plan this time. So the Remanded says, BC elections update, February 6th. 3 questions I asked Elections BC to which the public isn't entitled to know. 1, which Dominion voting system procedures weren't followed and changed to fit Elections BC model? 2, has Wi-Fi functionality been disabled or physically removed from tabulators? 3, what is the plan moving forward given Dominion's acquisition by Liberty Vote in the USA? Elections BC answered, we appreciate and share your interest in electoral integrity and transparency. Sure. Hello, fellow kids. As part of our mandate to administer provincial elections in BC, we must balance these values against election security, best practices to ensure that our elections remain free, fair, and secure. This means that some information about election equipment, procedures, and integrity processes are not publicly available. This is a standard security and integrity measure amongst election management bodies, both in Canada and internationally. This is the closest anyone from the public will get to answering what's happening with BC elections and whether anything connects to events south of the border. I've filed and served a petition to the BC Supreme Court requesting a judicial review of the 24 BC election. If you can, please help with the long-term legal cost. Link in the comments below. We keep going. So he's done more work to shine a light on what's going on than anybody in Canada. So I hope he's successful. Noah says, is responding to Richard, and Richard says, in 2025, Delaware and Illinois approved assisted dying laws. By the end of the year, more than 30% of Americans will live in states where doctors can prescribe fatal medication to terminally ill patients. The arc of history still bends towards justice. Fingers crossed. But Noah says, I'm starting to realize how rich societies are going to deal with severe population aging, and I don't like it. They're just going to kill them and hand over the countries to anybody who they can import. Reset complete. Sam Cooper says, this is the key. So Stephen's talking about, he says, fun fact, more corruption cases mean action, not more corruption. Canada has had no corruption the same way North Korea does by not investigating it. It's unfortunate it took corrupt police officers helping to assassinate good ones to get any progress, but this is a good start. So people are looking at corruption, and more police officers have been suspended with pay pending the outcome of investigations. That's interesting. So there's something going on with that. And Sam Cooper says, this is the key. All of the drugs, street violence, corrupt politicians, more corrupt procurement across the country than most could imagine. Whole communities targeted by gangsters working for hostile states. It took this to peel back one layer. It's unfortunate it took corrupt officers helping to assassinate good ones to get any progress, but this is a good start. So yeah, interesting times with regards to safety in Canada and how things are policed, and if we will have anybody held accountable for all of the things that have been happening. I'm not holding my breath because we're not really good at that at all. And so I'd love to get better, but I'm not I don't see any kind of better on the horizon. With that, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. I've got a place to be this morning, so I've got to be quick. And then we're going to do a kitchen table talk today. I sent the email yesterday, so I hope to see you at 1 o'clock. And if you want the